Hello, brothers and sisters. Hey, today let's talk about the grooming gang scandal. I haven't done a story on this one before, but I've been seeing more and more about it recently. So it looks like there is some movement on it. So let's start with this one. Scotland's SNP establishment is failing victims of grooming gangs, Westminster is told. Joni Reid says many in Scotland are becoming increasingly angry with the Scottish government's attempt to block an investigation or even any kind of independent scrutiny into organized child exploitation. So, yeah, I think this is a really big story in the UK. It's a big scandal that the government has been trying desperately for years to keep a lid on. And I think there have been a few cases come to trial now, mostly in the north of England. And they're trying to say, oh, it's just related to this north of England thing. But other people are coming out and saying, no, 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 it's much bigger than that. You know, Sadiq Khan has been hiding it in London, I've heard. Now we're seeing it up in Scotland as well. So it's rampant all over the country. And the more I see of it, people keep saying it's these Asian grooming gangs. The more evidence that comes out, it's really not Asian grooming gangs. It's young Pakistani men, for the most part, taking advantage of little Caucasian girls. I keep seeing this over and over and over. And the police seem to be failing the little girls and not doing the inquiry. And they don't want to hold the Pakistani men to account for their wrongdoing because everyone's just desperately afraid to be called a racist or an Islamophobe because most of these Pakistani men are Islamic. And I've even seen stories where men were excused and given probation because they just didn't know better. And this is just all unacceptable. And so it does appear that there's been a massive government cover up, but it feels to me like the lid's about to blow off of it. And it's shocking. Pedophiles should all be in jail or potentially shot. I know you don't have the death penalty in the UK, but I'm all for the death penalty for pedophiles. I'll just say it. That's one of the worst things you can possibly be. And if anyone in the government has been covering it up, they should also be charged. It's just like I've always wanted the Epstein files released in the US and follow the evidence high and low. Whoever they can find evidence that a person was a pedophile, they should be in jail, maybe even shot. So let's see what's going on in Scotland. A crusading Scottish Labour MP has accused the SNP government of doing all they can to block any independent scrutiny of organised rape gangs. Joni Reid was speaking during a debate in the UK government's rape gangs inquiry, which will only cover England and Wales. SNP and Green MSPs voted against a similar probe being set up in the northern border. Why would the SNP and the Greens be against doing an inquiry into rape gangs? This seems crazy to me. If no one has done anything wrong, then the inquiry will find nothing. What is the problem? What are they afraid someone is going to find? The MP of East Kilbride and Strathaven said women and girls had been failed by every institution and praised Labour ministers for finally acknowledging that failure after years of inaction. She went on, but in Scotland, we have had absolutely no acknowledgement or action. What advice would the minister give me and others across Scotland who are becoming increasingly angry that the Scottish government are doing all that they can, not to just block an investigation, but to block any kind of independent scrutiny or case review of organized child exploitation. Yeah, it's intolerable. Why are they blocking this? I'd be all for voting them out just because they're blocking this. That's enough for me. Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence and Women and Girls, responded, "There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that some of the things that may get found in the inquiry will have findings across the border. Unfortunately, the trafficking of young girls does not follow lines on a map as easily as we might think it does when we administer inquiries." Yeah, follow the evidence wherever it goes. And if it goes to Scotland, follow it to Scotland. What's the problem here? The debate was triggered after two survivors, Fiona Goddard and Ellie Ann Reynolds, resigned from the inquiry panel, citing a secretive environment and an attempt to downplay the racial religious motivations behind our abuse. Yeah, it's bad when some of the actual survivors are quitting the commission. And I've seen a third one may have quit as well. And I think that it's been hard to find the leader of the inquiry. So it does look like this is going to be a whitewash. Why would they do that? I think we all know. Labor is in control, and Labor gets a lot of their support from Muslims, and Pakistanis. So, of course, they want to cover this up, and probably some politicians have helped cover it up, and they don't want that to all be exposed. That's what it is. And in Scotland, it's probably similar. In Scotland, the SNP probably gets a lot of its support from the same groups, and mix that with the woke DEI nonsense that goes on in the UK, and everyone is terrified of being a racist. And I say, no, stop being worried about being accused to be a racist. Follow the evidence, and if a criminal act has been committed, charge the person and let them have their day in court, no matter what their race, no matter where they're from. This is not a racial issue. If most of these perpetrators are truly Pakistanis, then they're Pakistanis. Then we need to look at that. We can't just turn a blind eye to it because they're Pakistanis and we don't want to be called hateful and racists. That's nonsense. And if it turns out that they're Romanians or Bulgarians or something else from Europe, go after them too. I don't see a problem. Go after everyone. So let's see what Joni had to say here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has made it clear that women and girls were failed by every institution, and it is a positive step forward that the failure is now acknowledged by government and that acknowledgement is leading to action after years of inaction. But in Scotland, we have absolutely no acknowledgement and absolutely no action. So I want to ask the Minister what advice she would give me and others across Scotland who are becoming increasingly angry that the Scottish Government is doing all it can, not just to block an investigation, but to block any kind of independent scrutiny or case review of organised child exploitation.
And as I said, if that is true, what she said, that they're blocking any scrutiny, I hope SNP gets kicked out at the next election. They're not fit to be governing the country if they won't protect young girls in Scotland. Tell me if I'm wrong. Miss Reynolds is from Barrow in Furness in Cumbria, which Miss Phillips described as very much in the borderland of our two great countries, England and Scotland. And she urged her Scottish Labour colleague to continue to work with survivor groups up in Scotland to push for what exactly it is that they want to see in Scotland. In recent days, Miss Reid has been engaged in a war of words with the SNP and Glasgow City Council leader Susan Atkin over the financial crisis caused by homeless refugees in the city. The influx has been partly driven by generous Holyrood legislation that guarantees homeless people somewhere to live. No SNP MPs spoke in the debate on grooming gangs at the House of Commons on Tuesday. At Holyrood last month, Scottish Conservative leader Russell Findlay put forward an amendment to set up a Scottish inquiry. But First Minister John Swinney highlighted the work of the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry and said he was not persuaded another inquiry was needed. His MSPs later teamed up with the Greens to vote down the bid. 3 separate major police investigations into organized rape gangs in Glasgow uncovered dozens of young victims, many of them in care, and dozens of abusers, many of them from ethnic minority communities. However, despite a number of individual prosecutions, the city has never had a large-scale gang trial similar to those seen in England. I say no, they need a full-on inquiry onto what has gone on and hold everyone to account. Anything else is unacceptable, and if the SNP won't act, they need to be voted out, and politicians need to be put in that will take care of women and girls. And I think I'm going to start following this a little bit closer and see what other goings on there are, because it does seem like things are coming to a head on this. We are actually starting to see some movement, which is positive. Hopefully we can get these villains all put in jail or shot, as I said, and get justice for these women and girls who've been abused. Hey, if I got anything wrong here, let me know in the comments. If you like this, like and subscribe. And if you don't like it, don't watch it. Thanks, bye.